What's up guys, I'm Dean and welcome back to my channel. You know what video it is because you clicked on the title of the video, and also because I do this video every month. It is my movie diary where I go through every movie I watched in the last month and give it a rating out of 5, give you my one recommendation of the one I think you should go and watch, and give you the one which I think you should definitely avoid. This month is November. Well, it's December now, but we just did November, so let's talk about those movies. That intro was one of the worst I've ever done. And that's saying something. Anyway, please like, comment and subscribe. Let's just jump into this. The first movie I watched in the month of November was Last Night in Soho. And I really enjoyed it. I had slight issues with it the first time I watched it, but because certain plot details and certain twists work within the story and within the plot, but don't work thematically, and that was a big issue I had with this movie. But it was definitely something new for Edgar Wright, which I love. Edgar Wright is my favourite director, and there are still all the familiar elements that you'd get in an Edgar Wright movie here, which I really appreciated. I think all of these elements worked well here, and I still had a jolly good time, so I gave it 4.5 stars. Probably one of my favourite movies of the year, despite the thematic issues I have with it. I then watched American Psycho for actually the first time ever, and it was pretty good. It was nothing amazing. There was an amazing performance from Christian Bale, and apart from that, not a lot really wowed me. It was an interesting watch, definitely, but I think it's a little overhyped. So I gave it 4 stars. I then watched The Third Man, something that is regarded to be one of the best movies ever made. It was released in 1949, and it is a joy to watch. I found it really interesting and really captivating. Orson Welles gives an incredible performance, and I think they do really, really interesting things with cinematography and the lighting, especially. The way they use the lighting in this movie is fascinating, and it's worth a watch just for that. It can be a bit slow at times, and I've small issues like that, but overall I really enjoyed it, so I gave it 4 stars. I then watched Last Night in Soho again, and I enjoyed it more the second time because I could just, sit back, relax, and enjoy the dumb ride that this movie is. I knew that the certain twists in the plot I was going to find disappointing. I knew they were coming up, so I could just be fully engrossed in the way Edgar Wright made this movie and all those kind of key details here. There's like The Third Man, he uses lighting in a really interesting way, and colours are used in a really interesting way. And there's some genius camera tricks when Thomasin McKenzie goes back into the 60s. Elements like that I really, really loved, and I think everyone gave a great performance, and there was amazing music as always. And the action was good, and the horror worked well. I think it was quite a scary movie at times, worse than I was expecting. It is just these thematic issues I have a problem with, because I'm not 100% sure what it was going for with its themes. But apart from that, I still really enjoyed it, and it's probably like an average Edgar Wright movie for me. So, 4.5 stars still. I then watched Army of Thieves, which is a new movie on Netflix, and it's a prequel to Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, which I'm not a big fan of Army of the Dead. And a lot of issues that Army of the Dead has, this movie does not have. In Army of the Dead, they spend way too long, like an hour, 45 minutes maybe, assembling a team for a heist, and none of these characters are interesting. They don't recruit them in interesting ways, and that's all sorted here. I think the assembling of the heist team is very quick, very dynamic. All the characters are interesting, and the direction of this works well. In Army of the Dead, there's a really weird depth perception thing going on where it's just really, really clear on the face and everything behind them is blurry. And I found that incredibly off-putting in that movie. And you get shown a clip that happened in Army of the Dead in this movie, and it has that depth thing, and it really takes you out of the movie, and it really made me think how bad that element is. The high stuff is predictable, but there are some interesting directional decisions. I'm just making up. I'm a film student, I can't even speak about this stuff. There's some directional decisions that are made. I am just sticking with it, which work, but overall predictable and very bland and by the numbers. But I still had fun with it, so I gave it 3 stars. I then watched Eternals. My first watch of Eternals, I gave it 4 stars. So there's a review for it up there. I really enjoyed the entire aesthetic of this movie is of course incredible. The cinematography, the locations, the suits, all that worked brilliantly. Everyone gave an amazing performance. I don't have an issue with any of the Eternals like some people do. I think Sprite works very well. but because that actress was like 12 years old when she filmed that movie, and she acts like an adult, it's incredible. And I really liked the thematic ideas of it. I liked how kind of the movie just ended on a note, and I'm like, and that's that. Who knows if they did the right thing or not? It's up for you to decide. I really love that element of it. And on a first watch, I gave it 4 stars. I then watched Doctor No, which is the first ever James Bond movie, and it was pretty much exactly what I expected. It was not great. It's aged not amazingly because there's some weird things with the women, and the action isn't that interesting, and the plot is quite simple, and all those sort of things that weren't super surprising or interesting to me. But one thing that did surprise me is that James Bond fights a giant robot dragon. I gave it 3 stars. Moving on. I then watched Eternals again, and on a rewatch, I gave it 3.5 stars instead of 4. For me, on a rewatch, I found the third act much weaker, and there's certain inconsistencies with different characters which I noticed on the rewatch, and yeah, I really struggled to choose what to rate this because of these reasons. But I still think there are really strong character moments, although I don't think there's enough time spent with these characters. And like I said, I still love the moral ambiguity of surrounding it, but I'll stick with 3.5 stars for now. I then watched Hunt for the Wilder People, one of my favourite movies of all time. Taika Waititi's best movie, in my opinion. This just gives me it's just so charming and funny and quirky. It's incredibly funny. This is one of the most funny movies I've ever seen. But all of Taika's movies are very funny. Like What We Do in the Shadows. This one has perhaps the most heart to it, and such a strong emotional core. Sam Neill and Julian Dennison are incredible in their roles, and I really love the bond and the chemistry between them. And I really love the setting and the way the plot unfolds and everything about it. And I love the big crescendo of the third act as well. Just this movie is near perfect for me, to be honest. So I love it. 5 stars. Oh, okay. Just talked about a good movie. Let's talk about a bad movie. I watched Red Notice, the Gal Gadot, Ryan Reynolds, Dwayne Johnson thing. I'm not a fan of Dwayne Johnson's shtick, if we're being honest with each other. I'm not a fan of Gal Gadot in most things she's in. I don't think she's a great actress. And to be brutally honest with you, my friends, I'm not a fan of Ryan Reynolds' shtick either. And this movie is just Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson playing the same character they do in every single movie, with no semblance of any real plot or anything interesting happen or any risks. And it's got a twist at the end, which I could not stand. The twist at the end completely just didn't work with the rest of the movie thematically, and it ended in a weird way, and all these things just did not work for me. It was boring and bland and paint by numbers and not funny and predictable and confusing, and all these things all rolled into one. I did not like it. I gave it 2 stars. I then watched Ghostbusters 2016, the all-female one. I will be talking about all 4 Ghostbusters movies in this video, and if you want to hear me rank them, that video is up there. There. It's up there. Is this flipped? I don't know. I think it's up there. Oh, this isn't important. This isn't important. The cast of this is very well cast, but I think it's trying too hard to be quippy and funny and, oh, look at me, I'm saying something silly, and all the characters are silly. The first Ghostbusters movie isn't funny because there's jokes in it. The first Ghostbusters movie is a situational comedy and derives humour from the personality of the characters and the situations they find themselves in. The comedy in this movie is just, haha, I said a funny thing, and that doesn't work for me. I also feel like it's like a bad prequel in the way that it's like setting up everything so painstakingly and slowly to establish them as the Ghostbusters, where in the first original movie it was done within like the first 15 minutes. Here it takes too much time, and they spend too much time going, oh look, it's the logo, stuff like that. I'm not a fan of. Like I said, the cast was good. All of them are funny in other things, just I did not appreciate it that much here. I also talked about this in my podcast, which is up there, whichever side it is. So go check that out. We improved this movie. So every 3 weeks we take a bad movie, we talk about the good, we talk about the bad, and then we try to improve it. And if I'm being frank with you, my friends, this was our best improvement ever. So if you want to hear what a good version of this movie would be, go click up there, because it was great. Yeah, I gave it 1.5 stars because I didn't find it funny, and it was a comedy, so it failed at the main thing it was supposed to do. Okay, finally, I can talk about something good again. Run, Lola, Run is a German movie from 1998. It's a little bit Groundhog Day. I don't want to give too much away, but it was a joy. Um, the cinematography and the music and the sound effects, all of that complement each other perfectly to create a really fun and dynamic movie that keeps me interesting. The narrative style is something I would find annoying or boring in the past, but here I think it really works. It's a solid attempt at one of these movies, and I had a really good time with it. It is, out of all the new movies I've watched, one of the best ones I've seen in a while. I gave it 5 stars. I then watched Ghostbusters, the first one from 1984. And I really like this movie. It's just so weird, and I appreciate movies that are weird. Like, it tries something new and it doesn't make sense, and they don't explain anything, and there's not a lot of semblance of plot or themes or character arcs or anything like that. And all the characters are just the worst people. They've just got terrible personalities, and they treat science as kind of just like scientists as janitors, and all of this just works perfectly to make a movie which I think can never be replicated and never can be redone to the same quality that this movie is. It does have its flaws, but overall I think it's incredibly funny, incredibly intelligent, and incredibly witty. I love the cast of 4 Ghostbusters. I gave it 4 stars. I then watched Spencer, which was incredible. Kristen Stewart's performance was, chef's kiss. It was captivating because there's not a lot going on in this movie apart from just her performance, and she really manages to carry that throughout the movie. There's some amazing cinematography, some really interesting camera angles and color grading and stuff like that, and some incredibly moving moments. I really like the idea of telling Diana's story. Of number one, just doing it over 3 days. I think that's an interesting way to do it instead of doing a more standard biopic. And I think another really interesting way about the way they did it is they barely showed much else of the royal family. Like, you get quite a bit of Charles, as you'd expect, quite a bit of Harry and Will, which work well because they're just kids, and then very little. You get a tiny snippet of the Queen and pretty much no one else. And I really appreciated that just to show how isolated she was, and I thought that element of it worked really well. Performance was amazing. The costuming was amazing. There were some really clever callbacks and stuff like that, which I enjoyed. 4.5 stars. One of the best movies of the year. I then watched Ghostbusters 2, a movie which I like more than most people, I think. I understand people's complaints that it's not as funny as the first one, which doesn't work because, it's supposed to be a comedy. So that's a bit upsetting. But apart from that, I think it ups the stakes in an interesting way and continues the story of the Ghostbusters in an interesting way instead of just rehashing the same thing, which they kind of did, kind of didn't. I enjoyed the villain, and I enjoyed just the cast returning, apart from Bill Murray, who doesn't really put the effort into this movie. He's kind of just... it seems like he's really just given up and not trying in this movie. But all the other Ghostbusters are great. 3.5 stars. I then watched Ghostbusters Afterlife, which I didn't like as much. Like I said, just go check out my video ranking them if you want to know my full spoiler thoughts. But it was very non-Ghostbusters-y, which inherently obviously isn't a bad thing. But it just felt weird because I was unsure what kind of tone this movie was going for. I thought that was a bit confusing. And overall, I did like the team of the new Ghostbusters, and I like that kind of elements. But the third act felt a bit lackluster to me, and the way they got there felt a bit weird as well. So overall, I wasn't as impressed as I could have been, but I still had a good time. I gave it 3 stars. I then watched The Amazing Spiderman, which I talked about on my podcast. Up there, I've forgotten which one already, which I host with Fluffy Duffy and with Lex reviews on as a guest. And I had a jolly good time on the podcast, and I had a jolly good time watching this movie simply because Andrew Garfield is my favourite Spider-Man. I think so much of his performance is just so spot on for what the character should be for both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and I think they really nailed doing something different with the origin instead of rehashing it. I think they change it in interesting ways. I really enjoy Uncle Ben in this movie. I think that's great, and I think he's got amazing chemistry with Aunt May as well. This movie also has by far the best romance in any of the Spider-Man movies. It is just so real and cute, and it just feels so tangible and real, and that's what I really love about Emma Stone's performance in here. Yes, the villain's a little lackluster, and yes, it's a bit confused with its tone, but the action is great, the way Spider-Man moves is great, the swinging is great, the suit is great. All these elements really make a great Spider-Man movie for me, so I gave it 4 stars. I then watched King Richard, which is the Richard Williams biopic, the father of Serena and Venus Williams. So, just by saying that, I'm sure people who haven't heard about this movie are asking themselves, how come it's focusing on Richard and not the kids? And that's an issue I had going into this movie. But the movie addresses this in interesting ways and addresses the morality of what Richard Williams did in interesting ways, and I think it really focuses on him in interesting ways and that sort of thing, and I think it does give the spotlight to Venus and Serena enough to keep it interesting as well. I think Will Smith's performance was great. There was some really interesting cinematography here. Just all the performance was great. Jon Bernthal is another standout for me because that's a role I've never seen him do anything like that before, which I really enjoyed. I gave it 4.5 stars as well. Also one of my favourite movies of 2021. We're having a good month so far. We're on the home stretch with 5 movies left. I watched Raging Bull. I thought it was pretty good. I think the performance was interesting. I think, the performance was interesting. The writing was great. Overall, I had a jolly good time. I gave it 4 stars, although he played a terrible person. I should probably clarify that, because I know some people out there are going to be making this guy into a hero. Okay. I then watched V for Vendetta, which I'd never seen before, and I actually had a good time. I feel like it went more for style than substance, where it could have really dug into these political ideas and that sort of thing, but instead it opted for style instead. Hugo Weaving does a great job as V. John Hurt is incredible in the performance as well, and the way they shot him and the way they presented him in the movie was super interesting too. And of course, Natalie Portman, mwah, chef's kiss, incredible performance, as you'd expect from her. I gave it 4 stars because I did still have fun with it. I then watched Tick, Tick, Boom, and on my first watch I wasn't really sure what to think about it, and I gave it 4 stars, so we'll talk more about that in a second. I then watched Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. It is so hokey and weird and dumb, and the kids do not give good performances, but it's still fun, and the adults are great in it. Hagrid is incredible, and obviously Alan Rickman does a great job as well. Just the kid performances really drag this down. It's fun. I gave it 3 stars. And then the last movie I watched of the month was Tick, Tick, Boom, and I loved this movie. I've becoming more and more of a sucker for a musical recently, and Andrew Garfield really sucked me in here. Really tricked me into enjoying this, because he was incredible in it. For a guy that never sang, he had some great talent, and the songs were really good as well. And the way this musical was presented, I think, was super interesting as well. It had some really heartfelt moments. It had some funny moments, and Andrew Garfield did such a good job of portraying this character, and I think all the performances around him and the way the movie was made really elevated his performance to the next level. So I gave it 4.5 stars. Now, I know what you're thinking, Dean, what's the one movie you're recommending and what's the one movie you're saying I should avoid? Well, I'm glad you asked. I don't know why I took my glasses off there. That was a bit of a weird moment. Okay. Let's talk about this. The one movie I would recommend would be Run Lola Run. It's something I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't have watched because it's relatively old and it's German, it's a foreign film, but I thought it was really fun, it was really engaging. It's short, it's a short movie as well, which is always good in my books. And I just found it really captivating and made in an interesting way. I'd really focus on the sound while watching it as well. And the one thing I'd tell you to avoid, it would probably have to be Red Notice. It was just not fun for me. But I'm sure everyone in the world has already watched Red Notice because it's Netflix's biggest movie ever or whatever. Okay, thank you for listening. Please remember to like and comment and subscribe and all those lovely things. Tell me what's your favourite movie out of all the ones I watched this month, and let me know what you thought of Run Lola Run once you've watched it, because now you have to. That's your homework for next month. Your homework for next month is to watch Run Lola Run. Please like, comment and subscribe. I've been working on a few videos for this month. Hopefully I'll have a Spider-Man ranking, maybe DCEU Phase 2. I know I've been talking about that for ages, but we'll see. All my links are down below if you want to check out my Letterboxd or stuff like that, where I've got written reviews for all of these movies. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.